More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back, Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. 609-919-9200 is the number if you want to call and hang with us. Time in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios is 4:16. Yesterday, we lost a legend, not only in the game of women's basketball, but in basketball as its whole, as Pat Summitt passed away at the age of 64. Now joining us on the hotline is a confidant of one Pat Summitt, and that is the great coach at Rutgers University, the Hall of Fame coach, and that is Vivian Stringer. Coach, thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Thank you, Zach, and it's great to be here. I'm fine.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. So I know your friend has been battling with this terrible illness, and I had a family member battle with it as well. Just give me that initial thought when you finally heard the news that Pat passed away yesterday.
Well, when I first heard about the illness in the first place, it was like the earth stood still for a minute, and then it was like a giant earthquake, and it's been extremely difficult even trying to understand this a little bit. When I heard that she had passed away, I was so saddened because I knew that the world in sports, whether it's men or women's, anything, any sports, lost a great, great person. It's a legend, not just because of the many games that she's won, which makes her second to none, but this woman who served as a role model and one that we in any sport, whether it's football, basketball, gymnastics, or whatever, could have such a great respect and appreciation for.
That's the real special thing about your job, because it's not just about wins and losses. She impacted so many people's lives, and you impact so many people's lives as well. How is she a giver and a helper, though, to you, Coach? Well,
Pat, from the moment that she and I became friends at the first NCAA Final Four held in at Old Dominion, when I think it was Maryland, Tennessee. At the time I was coaching at Cheney State, as well as Louisiana Tech. We've been great friends ever since then. But, through everything, when it came to maybe a pattern that she may have watched me work, and she would say, well, Vivian, maybe you would consider maybe running a pattern 3 or 4 times in a row because these kids are, tend to forget a little more. Or if, for example, one of the great players, Mathieu Ajivon, was considering, after she had told us that she was going to come to Rutgers, but as it got closer to that signing date, was starting to change her mind a bit. And Pat called me, as she would often do, and said, "Hey, buddy, how's everything going?" And I say, "Man, I can't believe that one of our recruits is thinking about not coming to Rutgers." And she said, "Wait a minute, are you kidding me? Wait a minute, who was the person that recruited her?" I said, "Gillette." She said, "Well, let me speak to her." She got Gillette on the phone, and Gillette, man, what did you sell her on in the first place? And if you sold her, and Gillette said, "Well, I sold her about coach, and I sold her on Rutgers University." And she said, "Well, you know what? Then you got to come back to that. You got to come and you got to help her to understand that she gave her word, and this is what she said she was going to do. Gillette, you got to make sure you get to mom." I mean, she was so intense and so desirous of not just Pat Summitt at the University of Tennessee doing well, but that we had a responsibility. We understood that a long time ago, to continue to promote the game. She did everything to promote the game and to help all of us in any way that she possibly could. She helped me. There was a book, but her good friend Barnett, who was her lawyer and who actually was Bill Clinton's lawyer as well, she wanted to, you need to talk to him because you need to write a book. She was tremendously encouraging throughout my life. And so whether we talked about games that we had just played against one another, because at the time, people were much more inclined to be good people rather than just win at all costs, and it doesn't really matter. It was important that she was able to promote this game so that people across the country and across the world could appreciate, great coaching and outstanding play. And when she did that, the vast majority of people throughout this country were supportive and cheering on Tennessee because they set the gold standard. It was the gold standard that was set as she as a role model and really her players, the kind of sacrifice that they made and the excellence that they performed. And I would venture to say that to a great extent, what's going on here in the WNBA, the fact that we have the WNBA, I think that, was started as a result of the outstanding an outstandingly consistent program that was there at Tennessee. But she's just been, just a personal friend, and everything from something as simple as my son, who was at Morehouse, was doing a biography on her. Well, hey, tell Dustin to call me. I'd be happy to sit down and talk with him. Maybe he could meet me. We were headed to Atlanta. Maybe he could sit down and meet me there. I mean, she would do anything and everything. Everything. We talked about, let me just say this. When I first went to the University of Iowa, she was the first call that I got. She called me. She said, Vivian, you need to sit down with E. Wayne Cooley, who was the head of the High School Girls Basketball Association. She said, but I have to tell you, you have to know that, they have their state games, have maybe 15, 20,000 people that have been going for years. And they have been playing a 6-on-6 game. She said, and I know what you're going to say because I felt the same way when I was at Tennessee. Tennessee had the 6-on-6 game, but that's not going to help our game of the 5-on-5 game that's here now. But, Vivian, if I can give you some advice, meet with E. Wayne Cooley, help him to understand how the scholarship opportunities and the opportunities to expose the Iowa players would pay, its dividends in so many ways, and that we needed to progress this game. But this is what I would do if I were you. Well, I'm glad that she told me that because I didn't know anything about E. Wayne Cooley. But he and I became great friends. He did support the notion of changing from the 6-on-6 game to the 5-on-5 game. It was that when Rutgers was the number one. Well, actually, it was when I was at the University of Iowa. We were the number one team in the country. Well, when they came out with the pairings, when the NCAA came out with the pairings, the first thing that happened is she called me that morning and she said, "My God, I can't believe that they're sending you to Long Beach." I mean, that's just like a hot box. You can't even get a band in there. It's worse than a high school gym. Why don't you call, the NCAA, because certainly they know that the initial site that Long Beach had proposed was not the site that was being used. She said, you can't win in that situation. But I appreciate it. She was always looking out to help those that she thought were being mistreated in it anyway. She was the one that when the NCAA decided they were going to fine me $1,000 because I made a 30-second comment about our seating when most people in the country believed that Rutgers, North Carolina, and Tennessee were all number one seeds, and somehow we got all stuck in the same bracket. Pat had a half-hour show that she spoke about that courtside. My friend Sylvia Hassel, who was at North Carolina, made many comments about that on the radio. I didn't bother to comment at all because I had, quite frankly, had been so used to so many things strangely, happening that it just didn't matter. But what happened is that once the game was played and we ended up losing the game, the NCAA kept calling on people to ask questions as I sat on the podium there. And most of the questions were more toward, well, do you think that, Rutgers should have been in this particular seating spot? And through my frustration, I ended up saying, well, you know what? If they didn't have a site in Alaska, they would somehow find a way to get us there. So that was about a 20-second comment. Because I was frustrated, I could have said something long before that, but I didn't. Long story short is that all of a sudden, Rutgers was saddled with a $1,000 fine. And so I was informed that I had to pay $1,000 because of what I said. Well, sure enough, Pat and Sylvia, Sylvia called Pat and said, Vivian was the one that didn't say anything about this. And all of a sudden, she's the one that's fined. So Pat says, well, let me get a hold of your athletic director. Let me call and let them know that you weren't the one, that just didn't make sense. But she was always trying to further basketball, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure that so many people, she is so beloved. This brilliant icon is so beloved because she single-handedly, more than anyone else, was responsible for the support, the furtherance of women's basketball. And while a lot of people can win games, there are few that can win games, carry the weight of an entire group of people, that being women's sports or women that were playing, this game and create such excellence that people, when I hear, pro athletes in football and basketball comment on the Tennessee Lady Vols, that has everything to do with Pat and the standard that she set, and so I'm really hurt. I'm just hurt and and don't understand why. And I guess she showed us in her last days or her last years the grace, humility, the courage and strength that she had throughout her years. It was typical of Pat, because she didn't try to hide from it. She came right out and let everybody know what was going on, and she had that fight that she always, did have. I remember calling her when I found out about it, really being afraid that she was going to answer the phone because I didn't know really what to say. I tend to be one that will cry more when I can't say what I really think, and was so happy that she didn't answer the phone. So I called my good friend Harry Peretta there at Villanova, because I know that the two of them were also great friends. And he said, well, Vivian, you need to call her because you know that, she's your friend and she would want to hear from you. But if she doesn't answer, don't worry, because, hundreds of people are going to call, and she'll choose to call the people back that she wanted to call. Well, sure enough, 10 minutes after I hung up, she called me, and she said, hey, buddy, how you doing? What can I help you with? Everything okay? And I thought, oh, my God, I cannot believe. She's asking me if everything's okay?
Wow.
What can she help me with? Are you kidding me? And it just broke me down. And I thought, oh, my God, I have to be strong for her just to reflect this person who I have admired, and we have been such friends and shared in so many different kinds of conversations beyond basketball. You know what I mean? But I love her as a person and who she's represented, and we're going to miss her. A lot of people get so worked up about winning and losing that they forget that there was a time when we used to compete and shake hands and really wish each other well, and quite frankly, even critique each other's work so that we can get better. That day did exist. It doesn't anymore. But see, I think that the reference that Pat and I would have would be that, we came from a different place at a different time, and we appreciated and so respected the game and appreciate the opportunity that we had just to coach, and so for her to have the elite programs, it is fitting. It's often said that, the good Lord gives you the things that you can handle. The good Lord also gives to people, gifts that are smart enough to take advantage of those gifts. And she was that person to me. I can't say enough.
We're talking to the head coach of Rutgers as remembering Pat Summitt here on the Zach Gelb Shows. We're talking to C. Vivian Stringer, the Hall of Famer. Coach, let me ask you this, because it was clear just by what you were saying that you guys were definitely close friends, but you're also competing against each other on the court. After you guys lost to her in 2007 in the national championship game, what did she say to you after that game?
Believe it or not, it was like, Viv, I'm so sorry. It seems like we always end up in these spots, you and I, but I love you, and you know that you're a great coach, it's just like, wow, sorry, but I mean, what do you say? It didn't change anything. We have been, we remain friends, and it wouldn't be a game that could ever separate, people, and so often I would say, I yearn for those tea and cookie days, where you can really respect the athlete, and that, things have changed. But what I mean is, they often show, all athletes, walking through the lines and shaking each other's hand and saying, but, when we looked at the championships with, Cleveland and Golden State, you compete like crazy. But at the end, the beautiful part about it is there's such a warm, welcomed respect for what we're doing. You know what I mean? And you could see that, with the hugs that, that are shared. And that's what sport is supposed to be about. And I hold that dear. Pat always did. And it was never to humiliate anyone or to make someone feel bad or to kill their spirit, as a competitor. That's for the coach to get them ready and to understand that nothing is going to be handed to you. But, to follow through with what we all know, it doesn't matter whether it's your workplace or this workplace on a court or a field, you have to work hard to earn. And if you come up short, then you have to reckon with the fact that you came up short and there's something else that you have to do. So you don't make excuses. You find another way to get it done. And that's what, Pat has always subscribed to, and I do as well. And that's the Pat Summitt way. It was hard-nosed. It was not accepting excuses. And sometimes, players can think that that's really tough and that's hard and woe is me. But they understand that they can, or they need to move on because that's not what they need to be doing. But it's often thought, and we know this, the kind of integrity that you show, the kind of character that you show on the court, the reality and the realism that, you've got to do this, that, and the other in order to prepare. Maybe it's not for that moment, but you work hard so that when the opportunity comes, you're ready. And when that comes, you just have a sense of satisfaction that, that happened. Look, Pat lost one time. In 1 year, she lost, 10 games. And she went on to win a national championship. Why? Because they didn't give up. They didn't give up at the beginning. It had been easy, but she stayed on her neck because it's her passion. It's what's inside of her. And I think that all of us who are coaching can appreciate one's passion and appreciate that. Wow. We are thankful, that we have people that are passionate that won't let us sit by. And at the end of the day, what I do know is this. It doesn't matter whether that player is responding the way that they need to or the way we would like initially. But at the end, when it's time for them to graduate and it's time for them to get a job, they say, thank you, coach. And I know that so many of the Tennessee players have said, thank you, thank you to her. So, no, I tell you what, it's because she had a private plane. So often when we would go on recruiting trips, I would have to wait another day or so before I would be able to get out and go to the next spot. And she would have her private plane, and she would say, Vivian, would you like to ride with me? I'd sure love to talk to you. And I'll pick you up at thus and so time, and that's what we would do. And we discussed everything from I think one of the more detailed discussions took place when we were in Philadelphia. And we were both playing against one another. It was the Elite Eight, I think. It was the Elite Eight that we were playing for. And she was saying, oh, man, that team of yours was the best, but, we ultimately lost. But we shared some of the things that, I would have told the players and that didn't happen maybe that time. And, she likewise. But it is the most amazing thing because I think the beautiful part about all of this, and you have some outstanding coaches. You got a Harry Peretta who's giving of himself, and he'll come, and show me what he's doing offensively, and knowing that we're going to play each other, that year. So it doesn't surprise me that Harry and Pat became great friends. Not at all, because he's the person that gives of himself as well, and I think that's what it's all about, and not only in that, it's everything, whether it comes to, like I said, the books. Or she would say, there's an organization that the Speakers Bureau, and this is what, they would like you to talk about. And you can do it. Pat, I really haven't done anything like this before. No, you can do it because this is the conversation. This is what you need to do. He was always willing to give, and not just to me, but to so many people. But I consider myself very fortunate to have met this woman, this icon. And just like Jody Conrad at Texas said, she knew very early on that Pat was going to be somebody special. It was like Mike Krzyzewski said. She could have coached the men's team. It didn't matter. C.M. Newton was talking about that. Just like Nick Saban, with LSU football. When people like that everywhere recognize that this woman can coach, and so. Whether she even realized it or not, the fact that the young lady that just got the job, with San Antonio Spurs, as a, Becky Hammond, guess what? She was probably given that opportunity, whether they knew that specifically or not, because people recognized that Pat Summitt can coach. No excuses made, flat out, male or female. This woman can coach. And like I said, I think everybody recognizes that. They believe that because of the numbers. I'm trying to tell you that I loved her. She had a passion. She had a genuine love for people, a genuine respect for people, a genuine respect for character. And she just gave. And she elevated this game, and few people can, and maybe the John Woodens of the world, who he was. But Pat is that. Pat is our John Wooden and more.
Coach, before we let you run, a final one here with Vivian Stringer, the head coach as Rutgers, as we remember the late, great Pat Summitt. It's so important because of how much that she meant, not only to your game, but just the game of basketball, that we can continue on her legacy. And you're in a position of power as a coach, and you see many young people each and every day to continue on her legacy. Let's say in 10 years, what are you going to tell your players about Pat Summitt and what she meant to your game?
You know, in 10 years, it will be what it is now. And that is that there's never any shortcuts. You work hard as best you can. You don't cheat yourself, you know, in anything that you do. And, you know, that's something that, you know, I learned a long time ago. I see that certainly is the formula for success for Pat, you know, and it will always be. You know, it could be 50 years from now. You know, there's no substitute for that. And so when I drive kids, you know, to the point where they think they're going to lose their mind or they can't do it, you know, I know that I owe my success to not bending, you know, to understand that there's changes, you know, as we evolve this game. But quite honestly, I won't sacrifice my standards. And it's been reinforced. Let me give you an example. Pat and I, one day I was watching the game first, and I didn't care for the way her players played. Now that might sound strange, right? So I called her and I said, Pat, man, I can't believe that I saw your players play the way they did. I even forgot the competitors. But I said, you know what? It was interesting. I said, because what you said in the locker room, because she was wired, what you said in the locker room is exactly what I had said, you know, yesterday, myself in the locker room, to our players. What is going on with these kids today? You know, and see, she was telling me why she said what she said, and I was telling her what I saw, and I said, that is not a Tennessee player. They were not representing Tennessee as all players. I mean, I've coached against her since the first NCAA championship. You know how many years we've been friends? How many years I've seen her players, what kind of players they are? And we were discussing that, and I just smiled to myself because, see, she could tell me the same thing, you know, and she said, Vivian, I agree. She had to get a different kind of player. She had to get a Tennessee player. What does it mean to be a Lady Vol? You know, and so, you know, just as she shared with me, you know, she watched our game, it was in Madison Square Garden. She said, you know, these kids today aren't able to pick things up quite as much. I think that they're probably, maybe if you just run things through 2 or 3 times, the exact same thing, you know? And just like she saved me with Agilon, who went on to become a WNBA player, you know, I had a parent call me up Christmas Eve, you know, talking about he wanted his daughter to play for Rutgers. And I want my daughter to transfer. She don't want to play at Tennessee anymore. Well, you know, as I shared with him, most freshmen are frustrated, and most freshmen want to leave the first year. But the long story short is that she's going to be fine. You know, she's in the best place, blah, blah, blah. Go through that. Then I called her up. And she said, isn't this a shame? Here it is, New Year's Eve, when we should be able to sit back and look forward to Christmas, you know? And we have to be strained with that. She said, you know, this kid didn't know where she's supposed to go and what she's supposed to do. I said, I know that. We played you a couple of weeks ago. I could tell that. Because, you know, like, as a coach, you study people's patterns and what they're supposed to do, the opponents. And she didn't know what she was doing there. And if she didn't know what she was doing, I think it was Maryland that they were playing. And we just, you know, smile. But it's reassuring to have somebody that you're talking to that understands, you know, the same things. You know what I mean? And that, you know, genuinely care about you as a person. And so the anecdote that she spoke about when saying that you can't expect players to respond to you if you don't love them first. It's about your caring, basically, to paraphrase what it is. You have to care about them first before they're going to care about what's going on the floor. And I know that Pat genuinely did care about all of her players. And, I mean, it was tough. You know, they had to take a tongue lashing from time to time. But at the end, I don't think that there's one that wouldn't say that, you know what, it was, you know, it made an impression on my mind. And I would vow that I wouldn't let that happen again.
Coach, it was an honor to speak to you today. We thank you so much under these tough circumstances, and we send our condolences not only to you, but the entire Tennessee Nation and the Summitt family. Thank you so much. We hope to get you on the show a little bit before the season. And do me a favor, Coach. Please say hello to John Chaney. I love Coach Chaney.
Oh, I sure will. Thank you so much for loving him and for your feature on Pat, and I look forward to it in September. And thank you for all of what you do for all of us.
Thank you so much, Coach. Have a great day. There is Coach C. Vivian Stringer joining us on the hotline, the Hall of Fame coach over at Rutgers. And her and John Chaney were together at Chaney State, actually, in the early days. And then she went on to Iowa and then eventually Rutgers. But just what a kind woman to come on and talk to us about her. And she could go on and on and on about Pat Summitt. And the real remarkable part of all of her stories is they were adversaries on the court. In 2007, obviously Rutgers wanted to beat Tennessee. Now, Tennessee won the basketball game in the national championship 59-46, but there was such a level of respect. And that's the whole neat thing about what Pat Summitt did. It didn't matter if you were Gino Auriemma. It didn't matter if you were C. Vivian Stringer. It didn't matter if you were the head basketball coach at Villanova or Temple like Tanya Cardoza. Pat Summitt was always there to help. And she is such a monumental figure in the game of women's basketball. And really, her and C. Vivian Stringer are two pillars in this game. And unfortunately, we lost Pat Summitt at the early age of 64. But her impact, my oh my. It's something that we are going to remember for a very long time. And it will go on way beyond 1974 to 2012 at Tennessee. It will live on forever in that game of women's basketball. And that's what I like about the Basketball Hall of Fame. It isn't the NBA Hall of Fame. It's not the WNBA Hall of Fame. It's not the College Hall of Fame. It's just a Hall of Fame for basketball. And you have important figures in that game of basketball, like a C. Vivian Stringer in it, like a Pat Summitt in it. And they're just special people. And you see two of the best coaches in college basketball. Also add Gino Auriemma. All three of them have such a great respect for each other. Larry Brown once told me when he was coaching against Fran Dunphy, he looked upset, and he goes, I'm just happy the game's over because it's not fun coaching against friends. But those games between friends, when I look at it, they're special. And they create some of the best memories in that game because all those teams and all those great coaches are so well prepared. 609-919-9200. This is the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Excellent stuff from the Hall of Fame coach and C. Vivian Stringer. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back right after these short messages with a Philly update and some more sports talk.